I never planned to become a mother. I married a man I barely knew, running from my own broken past. I thought it was just a deal, just a way to survive. But then I met his son, a quiet little boy with sad eyes who had lost too much already. I didn't know that loving him would change everything. I didn't know that a child could teach me what it means to be brave, to hope again, to believe in second chances. This is the story of how I became his stepmom. How a marriage that started wrong became something beautiful. How heartbreak led me to the truest love I've ever known. It's about the family we choose, the bonds that can't be broken, and learning that sometimes the people who save us are the ones we thought we were saving. This is my story. I never thought I'd find love in a pair of scared brown eyes belonging to a 7-year-old boy, but life has a strange way of healing us when we least expect it. My world fell apart 2 years before I met them. I lost my fiancé in a car accident 3 weeks before our wedding. The dress hung in my closet for months because I couldn't bear to look at it or throw it away. I stopped believing in happy endings. I stopped believing in much of anything at all. I moved to a new city to escape the memories. I took a job at a small bookstore and lived in a quiet apartment where nobody knew my story. That's where I met Daniel. He came in every Saturday morning with his son, Lucas. The boy never smiled. He'd stand in the children's section, running his fingers along the spines of books but never picking one up. Daniel would buy him whatever he wanted, but Lucas always shook his head. Daniel and I started talking, just small conversations about books and weather. He told me his wife had passed away when Lucas was 4. 3 years later, the boy still hadn't recovered. He barely spoke. He didn't play with other kids. Daniel's eyes carried the same sadness I saw in my own mirror every morning. I don't know how it happened, but Daniel and I became friends, then something more. Not the fireworks kind of love I'd had before. This was different, quieter, like two broken people holding on to each other in the dark. When he asked me to marry him, I said yes because I thought maybe we could be broken together. Maybe that was enough. The wedding was small and simple, but that night, lying awake in a strange house that was supposed to be my home, I felt empty. I'd married a man I cared about but didn't truly love. I felt like a fraud. Then everything changed because of Lucas. He had nightmares almost every night. I'd hear him crying through the walls. Daniel slept heavily and never woke up, so I started going to Lucas's room. The first night, I just sat on the edge of his bed. He looked at me with those big brown eyes, confused. I didn't say much. I just stayed until he fell back asleep. The second night, he let me hold his hand. The third night, he told me what he dreamed about. He dreamed his mom was calling him, but he couldn't find her. My heart broke into 1,000 pieces. I started reading to him every night before bed, not because Daniel asked me to, but because I wanted to. Lucas began to open up. He told me about school, about the kids who made fun of him for being quiet, about how he missed his mom so much it hurt his chest. I understood that feeling more than he knew. Slowly, things changed. Lucas started smiling. Little smiles at first, then real ones that lit up his whole face. He'd wait for me after school and tell me about his day. He'd bring me drawings he made in art class. One day, he held my hand while we walked to the park, and I realized something had shifted inside me. This little boy had become my whole world. I fell in love with Lucas before I ever fell in love with Daniel. But loving Lucas taught me how to love again. It opened up all the places in my heart I'd locked away. The child I became a mother to saved me in ways I never expected. 6 months after the wedding, I woke up and looked at Daniel sleeping beside me. For the first time, I felt something real, something true. He wasn't just the man I'd married to escape my pain anymore. He was the father of the boy I loved. He was the man who'd been patient with me, who'd never pushed, who'd let me heal in my own time. That morning at breakfast, Lucas called me Mom for the first time. He said it so casually, asking me to pass the juice. Daniel's eyes met mine across the table. We both had tears running down our faces. I came into their lives as a broken woman looking for somewhere to hide from her grief. But Lucas didn't need someone perfect. He just needed someone who would stay. Someone who would show up every single night, even when it was hard. And in showing up for him, I found myself again. They say you can't force love, and that's true. But you can choose to show up every day, and sometimes that's when love finds you anyway. The first time I saw him, he was sitting alone on a bench outside the school, swinging his legs that didn't quite reach the ground. All the other kids were running and screaming and playing, but he just sat there staring at his shoes. Something about the way he held himself so small made my heart ache. I was there to pick up my best friend's daughter, filling in because she had to work late. That's when his father rushed up, apologizing for being late. He looked exhausted, tie loose, hair messy. He scooped the boy up, and the child buried his face in his dad's shoulder without saying a word. I didn't think I'd see them again, but life had other plans. 2 weeks later, I ran into his father at the grocery store. We recognized each other and started talking. His name was Marcus. His son was Illy. He told me he was drowning. Work was demanding. His mother tried to help, but she was getting older. Illy needed more than he could give alone. The words came out of my mouth before I could stop them. I offered to help. I started watching Illy 3 days a week after school. At first, he barely looked at me. He'd do his homework in silence, eat the snacks I made without comment, and sit by the window waiting for his dad. My heart broke a little more each day. This 6-year-old boy had locked himself away from the world, and I didn't know how to reach him. But I kept trying. I'd talk to him even when he didn't answer. I'd tell him about my day, about the funny thing I saw on the bus, about anything at all. I just wanted him to know he wasn't alone. Some days he'd glance at me. That felt like progress. 3 weeks in, I noticed he kept looking at the piano in my living room. I asked if he wanted to try it. He shook his head, but his eyes said something different, so I sat down and played a simple song. Nothing fancy, just a soft melody my grandmother taught me years ago. When I finished, Illy was standing right next to me. He didn't say anything, but he put one small finger on a key. The note rang out in the quiet room. That became our thing. Every day, we'd sit at the piano together. He started pressing more keys. Then I taught him a simple song. The first time he played it all the way through, he looked up at me and smiled. It was small and quick, but it was real. I wanted to cry right there. Marcus noticed the change too. Illy started talking more at home, started eating better, started acting like a kid again. Marcus would look at me with such gratitude it made me uncomfortable. I wasn't doing anything special. I was just showing up, just being there, just loving a child who desperately needed someone to see him. But somewhere along the way, it became more than a favor for a struggling father. Illy became mine in all the ways that matter. I started planning my days around him. I'd buy his favorite snacks and remember which vegetables he hated. I learned that he loved dinosaurs and space and didn't like loud noises. I knew when he needed a hug and when he needed space. Marcus and I grew closer too. He'd stay for dinner sometimes. We'd talk after Illy went to bed. He told me about his late wife, about how he felt like he was failing their son every single day. I told him he was doing better than he thought, that Illy just needed time, that love looked like showing up even when you're tired, and Marcus did that every single day. When Marcus asked me to marry him, it wasn't a grand romantic gesture. It was a quiet question late one night. He said he couldn't imagine life without me, that Illy couldn't either, that we'd somehow become a family without even trying. I said yes because it was the truest thing I'd ever felt. The night before the wedding, I tucked Illy into bed. He looked up at me with those big, serious eyes and said thank you. I asked him what for. He said for not giving up on him, for staying even when he didn't talk, for teaching him piano and making him laugh again. He said his mom sent me to them because she knew they needed help. I kissed his forehead and told him he saved me just as much as I saved him, that he taught me what real love looks like, that being his mom was the greatest gift of my life. Some people search their whole lives for purpose and never find it, but mine found me in a sad little boy who just needed someone to stay. I married Richard for all the wrong reasons. I was 23, broke and running from a family that never wanted me. When he offered me a way out, I took it without thinking twice. He needed someone to help with his son. I needed somewhere to belong. It was a deal, not a love story. Richard was 15 years older than me, successful and serious. He didn't pretend this was romance. His wife had died 2 years earlier, and he was tired of hiring nannies who never stayed. He laid it out simply. I'd have a home, security, and a credit card. In return, I'd take care of his house and his 8-year-old son, Jamie. We'd be married on paper, nothing more. I thought I could do it. I thought it would be easy to keep my heart out of it. Then I met Jamie. He was small for his age, with messy blonde hair and his father's green eyes. The first day, he looked at me like I was just another person who would leave. He'd been through 4 nannies that year alone. I didn't blame him for not trusting me, but I wasn't going anywhere. For the first time in my life, I had a real home. I wasn't about to mess it up. I drove Jamie to school every morning and picked him up every afternoon. I made his lunches and checked his homework. I went to his soccer games even though Richard was always too busy with work. At first, I did it because it was my job, but slowly something changed. Jamie started leaving me little notes in the kitchen. Just small things like "thank you for breakfast" or drawings of the 2 of us. He'd wait by the window for me to come home from the grocery store. He started asking me to read him bedtime stories, even though he was probably too old for that. I never said no. 3 months in, he called me Mom by accident. He turned bright red and said sorry. I told him it was okay, that he could call me whatever felt right. He never called me by my name again after that. I fell in love with that boy so completely it scared me. He became the reason I woke up smiling, the reason I actually cared about what happened tomorrow. I'd spent my whole life feeling like I didn't matter to anyone, but I mattered to Jamie. He needed me, and I needed him more than I ever expected. Richard noticed. He came home earlier, stayed for dinner more often, started asking about my day. The walls between us began to crack. One night, after Jamie was asleep, Richard told me I was good for his son. That Jamie was happy again. He looked at me differently, and I felt something flutter in my chest that I'd been trying to ignore. I was falling for Richard too, not because of the deal we made, but because of the man I saw when he read to Jamie before bed. The man who worked so hard because he wanted to give his son a good life. The man who looked at me like maybe I was more than just the help. But good things don't last, not for people like me. Richard's first wife's parents took us to court. They said I was too young, that the marriage was fake, that Richard was using me. They wanted custody of Jamie. They had money and lawyers and a dead daughter whose memory they used like a weapon. They said Jamie needed real family, not some girl his father hired. The court dates were terrible. They made me feel small and worthless all over again. Richard fought for me, for us, but I could see the stress breaking him down. His business was suffering. His reputation was damaged. All because of me. The night before the final hearing, I packed my bags. I left a note for Richard saying I was sorry, that I never meant to cause problems, that this was for the best, but I couldn't leave without saying good-bye to Jamie. I went to his room and he was still awake. He asked where I was going. I told him I had to leave for a little while. He grabbed my hand and begged me not to go. He said he didn't care what anyone said. He said I was his mom and moms don't leave. I held him while he cried. I cried too. I promised him I loved him more than anything in the world, that nothing would ever change that. Richard found us like that. He didn't yell. He just took my bag and unpacked it. He said we'd fight together, that family doesn't run when things get hard, that I was his wife and Jamie's mother, and he wasn't letting me go. The courtroom battle was long, but we won. Because love isn't about biology or perfect timing. It's about who shows up and stays, even when leaving would be easier. I left on a Tuesday morning, while they were both still asleep. I kissed Ethan's forehead one last time, memorizing the way his hair curled against the pillow, and walked out of the only home that ever felt real. My suitcase was light. My heart was destroyed. The marriage had fallen apart slowly, then all at once. David and I had tried to make it work, but we'd built our relationship on shaky ground. We'd married too fast for the wrong reasons, and the cracks finally broke us. We fought constantly. The love we thought we had turned bitter and painful. We both knew it was over, but leaving Ethan was different. He was 9 years old, and for 3 years I'd been his stepmom. I'd packed his lunches and helped with his homework. I'd cheered at his baseball games and held him when he had nightmares. I'd loved him with everything I had, and walking away from him felt like cutting out my own heart. David said it would be easier this way, a clean break, no confusion for Ethan. I wasn't his real mother anyway. Those words cut deeper than anything else. I knew he was hurt and angry, but it didn't make it hurt less. I signed the divorce papers and left town the same week. I moved 4 hours away and tried to build a new life. I got a job at a library and rented a small apartment with a window that didn't face the right direction for morning light. Everything felt wrong. I'd wake up and forget for a moment that I didn't need to make Ethan's breakfast. I'd see kids his age and wonder if he was doing okay, if he missed me, if he understood why I left. 6 months passed like walking through fog. I went to work. I came home. I existed but didn't really live. My sister said I needed to move on, but how do you move on from a child you still loved like he was yours? Then one Saturday afternoon, my phone rang. It was David. My stomach dropped. He never called. He asked if we could meet, said it was important, said Ethan needed to see me. I drove those 4 hours and 3.5, my hands shaking on the wheel the whole way. When I pulled up to the coffee shop, Ethan was sitting outside with David. He looked taller. His hair was longer. When he saw me, he didn't run over. He just stared like he couldn't believe I was real. I knelt down in front of him, and he crashed into me, hugging me so tight I couldn't breathe. He was crying. I was crying. He said he thought I didn't love him anymore, that he thought I left because of something he did wrong. My heart shattered into a million pieces. David explained that Ethan had been struggling. He'd stopped doing well in school, stopped playing baseball. He kept asking when I was coming back. David had tried everything, but finally realized that Ethan needed me, that I wasn't just a stepmom on paper. I was his mom in every way that mattered. David apologized. He said he'd been angry and selfish, that he'd kept us apart because he wanted to hurt me, but he ended up hurting Ethan instead. He said he didn't expect me to forgive him, but he was asking me to be part of Ethan's life again. That we could figure out the details, but Ethan needed his mom. I looked at this man I'd once married, then divorced. We'd caused each other so much pain, but we'd also given each other something beautiful. We'd both loved Ethan enough to put him first. That had to count for something. Over the next year, we figured it out. I moved back to town. Ethan stayed with me every other week and most weekends. David and I learned how to be friends instead of enemies. We went to Ethan's games together. We celebrated his birthday as a team. We proved that families don't have to look traditional to be real. Ethan started smiling again, started bringing home good grades, started being a kid again. He told me once that he used to think divorce meant losing people, but now he understood it just meant things changed. He said he had 2 homes now, and both of them had me in it. Sometimes David and I would catch each other's eye across a room and share a small smile. We didn't work as husband and wife, but we worked as Ethan's parents. That was enough. That was everything. People always ask if the broken pieces of our family were hard to put back together, and the truth is yes, but what we built from those pieces was stronger than what we started with because this time we built it with only love and no lies. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs hope today. Subscribe to hear more real stories about love, loss, and second chances, because we all deserve to know we're not alone. Life doesn't always go the way we plan. Sometimes it breaks us, but sometimes in those broken pieces we find something even more beautiful. Family isn't always about blood. It's about who stays, who shows up, who loves us even when it's hard. I have more stories to share with you. Stories about hope, healing, and love that survives against all odds. Click on the next video and let's keep going together. Your story matters too. You matter, and I'm so glad you're here. Until next time, remember, even the most broken hearts can learn to love again.